My name is Natalia Kovalchuk. I'm 32 years old. On the evening of July 11th, 2025, while standing in my small kitchen in Ohio, folding laundry that still smelled of summer air, my heart just stopped. In that quiet moment, I died. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't anyone powerful or famous. I was just a refugee. Just a woman trying to rebuild a life that had already been torn apart once before. Only a few years earlier, I was an architect in Kyiv, Ukraine. My husband, Maxim, and I had just finished renovating our tiny apartment on the third floor of an old yellow building near the river. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A place filled with the sound of Jana's laughter and the smell of coffee and wet paint. Jana was 4. Her room was painted the color of sunlight, with a mural of tall sunflowers stretching toward the ceiling. She used to twirl around in there with her little arms open, saying, "Mama, I'm a flower too." I can still hear her voice, that high, clear giggle that filled every corner of our home. We had normal worries, bills, deadlines, what to make for dinner, whether she'd eat her vegetables. We dreamed about taking a trip to the Carpathian Mountains that summer. And then, in what felt like a single heartbeat, the world fell apart. When the invasion began, everything changed overnight. Maxim said he had to stay. "I can't run, Lena," he told me. "Someone has to defend what's left." I can still see the way his hand trembled when he brushed my hair back from my face, trying to look strong. I took Jana and ran, carrying a single suitcase and a small stuffed rabbit she refused to let go of. The journey was a blur of noise and shadows. Nights in damp basements, train cars so packed you could barely breathe, the sound of sirens and crying children echoing through the dark. I remember Jana's tiny hand gripping mine until her fingers went white. I told her we were playing a game, that we were hiding so the world wouldn't find us. But inside, I was falling apart. We made it here, somehow. To America. The Millers, a kind family who had never met us, opened their home. They gave us a warm room with blue curtains and a little bed for Jana. I found work cleaning houses, polishing floors and windows, while listening to English words I only half understood. It wasn't easy, but I was grateful. So deeply, humbly grateful. But at night, when the house was quiet and Jana was asleep, that gratitude would crumble into something heavier. A cold, aching weight in my chest. Every news report, every message that never came, every missed call from Maxim, it chipped away at me. I'd wake up in the dark thinking I'd heard his voice, only to realize it was the wind. My prayers became smaller each night. Just a whisper. Please, keep him safe. Just let him live. But sometimes, it felt like those words were being swallowed by the air, disappearing before they ever reached heaven. That evening, everything felt ordinary. Jana was drawing at the kitchen table. A picture of our old apartment, with stick figures holding hands in front of it. I remember smiling, feeling that tiny spark of warmth in my chest. I pulled one of her t-shirts from the dryer. It was yellow, the same color as those sunflowers she loved. It smelled like sunshine and laundry soap. I thought about my mother then, how she used to fold clothes in the same slow, careful way, humming a song I hadn't thought of in years. I could almost hear her voice, soft and steady, as if she were standing beside me again. And in that quiet moment, my heart clenched. A sharp pain, sudden and searing, cut through my chest. It stole the air from my lungs. There wasn't even time to call out. My hand slipped from the shirt, and all I could think was Maxim. His face, his voice, the way he said my name, and then silence. Everything went black. No sound, no light, no heartbeat, just stillness. But it wasn't an empty blackness. It wasn't nothingness at all. It felt like a pause, a stillness between two heartbeats, a silence so deep it almost seemed alive. The pain was gone. The heaviness that had lived in my chest for so long, the fear, the worry, the endless ache, it had vanished completely. In its place was peace, not the kind that comes at the end of a long day or after tears finally stop, but something far beyond that. Something whole, vast, and alive. I opened my eyes, not the eyes of my body, but another kind, a deeper kind of vision. And suddenly, I was looking down from the ceiling of the laundry room. Everything was so sharp, so full of light. I could see the folds of the towels, the little pile of socks I hadn't matched yet, the hum of the dryer spinning. My body was lying on the floor between the washer and a basket of clean clothes. It looked so small, so still, like it had never belonged to me at all. I didn't feel horror or panic, Just a soft, gentle knowing, like watching a scene in a film that you already understand the ending to. Then I heard footsteps, fast, stumbling, and Lisa, my host mom, burst into the room. She called my name, her voice breaking in half. Natalia! Oh my God, Natalia! Her hands shook as she reached for me, and then Brandon came running, sliding to the floor beside her. He didn't even hesitate. He started CPR, counting under his breath, his palms pressing down hard against my chest. I could see the sweat on his forehead, the tears welling in Lisa's eyes, the tremble in her voice as she prayed under her breath. I watched all of it, yet none of the fear touched me. The peace around me was like a warm, living ocean, still, steady, endless. Their panic looked small against it, like waves breaking on a calm shore. I wanted to tell them not to be afraid, that I was still here, that I wasn't gone. Not really. But my voice, if I even had one, didn't reach them. And then I saw her, Jana, my little girl. She stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing her favorite pink pajamas with the faded stars. Her tiny hands gripped the doorframe so tight her knuckles turned white. Her eyes, wide, full of confusion and terror, locked on my body. That sight pierced through the calm, through the stillness. It was the only thing that reached me. A wave of love, so powerful, so pure, hit me like a flood. My baby, my heart. I tried to go to her, to kneel down and wrap her in my arms, to whisper the words she always wanted to hear. Mama's here? You're safe? It's okay. But I couldn't move toward her. I could only watch. And yet that love, that impossible, endless love, grew stronger and stronger until it filled every corner of the room. It felt like the walls, the air, even the light itself was made from that love. It didn't come from me. It was me. Every part of who I had ever been, every memory, every heartbeat, all of it became that love for her. And then the light. It didn't come all at once. It wasn't like flipping a switch or turning on a lamp. It began gently, like the first soft glow of dawn creeping into a dark room. It wasn't from a bulb or a fixture in the ceiling. It came from everywhere, all at once. The hallway in front of me was bathed in gold, warm and alive, as if the sun itself had chosen to rise right there inside my house. It filled every corner, the laundry, the floor, the air around me. And it called to me, gently, tenderly, like a whisper you don't want to ignore, pulling me in. As the light grew, the world around me began to fade. The walls that had once been so solid and real started to blur. The room softened, losing its edges, and all the things I had known, the machines, the baskets, even my own body, slipped away, like the memory of a dream you can't quite hold on to. It wasn't frightening. It was peaceful, comforting, like I was shedding the weight of a life I didn't need to carry anymore. And in that moment, I let go. There was no hesitation. No fear, just the quiet surrender to whatever this was. I felt myself being drawn forward, but it wasn't like being pulled or yanked. It wasn't forceful. It was like I was being invited to step into something beyond, something so full of peace that I couldn't have resisted even if I wanted to. The warmth around me deepened until it was all there was. And suddenly I realized I wasn't floating anymore. I was standing, but standing on nothing. No ground beneath me, no ceiling above me, no air pressing against me, just an endless stretching light, as far as the eye could see in every direction. And then, standing in the heart of that light, was a figure. It was Jesus. I've heard people talk about him all my life, but nothing could prepare me for what it was like to see him. People try to describe him, to capture his face, his voice, but words fall short. He wasn't like any picture I'd ever seen, any statue, any image we paint of him. The light didn't shine on him as if he were standing under it. No, the light came from him. It was woven into the very fabric of who he was, like he was one with it. Every part of him radiated that same warmth, that same deep, gentle power. It wasn't the kind of power that demands attention or submission. It was the kind of power that made you feel seen, understood, loved, without question. I couldn't tell you the color of his eyes. I couldn't even say what his face looked like, but I can tell you what was in his eyes. When he looked at me, it wasn't just a glance. It was as if he had known me from the very beginning, before my first breath, before my first step. He knew every heartbeat, every quiet thought, every silent prayer I'd ever whispered. He saw all of me, not just the good parts, not just the clean parts. He saw every mistake, every moment of fear and doubt, every time my faith had faltered or completely faded. And yet, when he looked at me, he loved me. Not in spite of it, not in a way that was forgiving from a distance, but through it. His love wasn't like a feeling you can hold in your chest or something you can try to explain. It wasn't just something you feel. It was a force so powerful that it broke through everything I'd built around myself. Every wall, every shield I'd put up over the years, trying to protect myself from the pain, from the grief, from the world. His love poured through all of it, soft but unyielding. Tears came, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, like every wound I had carried, all the corruption, all the weight of grief, all the pain from the war, from running, from losing everything, began to melt under his gaze. There was no more struggle, no more holding on to the hurt. I was being held in that love, and everything that had broken me was made whole again. I didn't have to say a single word. He already knew. He knew the weight I carried, the exhaustion that lived in my bones, the guilt of running when others stayed behind, the fear that had taken root in my chest every night I thought of Maxim. He knew about the ache of loneliness that never left me, even when I smiled for Jana, even when I pretended to be strong. He saw all of it, every hidden tear, every silent prayer, and still there was no judgment, none, only love. His words weren't made of sound. They were something deeper, pure truth, spoken right into the center of my being. "Peace, my child," he said, "you are home." And just like that, my strength broke. My knees gave out beneath me, and I fell before him, trembling, sobbing, undone. Every ounce of fear, every shard of chaos, every night spent wondering if I'd ever see Maxim again, all of it melted away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible or lost. I was known, fully, completely known, and loved beyond anything I could have ever dreamed. He let me cry. He didn't rush me. He didn't turn away. He simply stood there, his light wrapping around me like a warm, living blanket. It wasn't light that burned, it comforted, it healed. And when my sobs finally faded into quiet, when my spirit felt still again, he extended his hand. Before us, a vision unfolded. It wasn't like watching a movie, it was alive. The air shimmered, and suddenly, there was Maxim, my husband. He was in a muddy trench, his uniform torn, his face streaked with dirt and rain. I could see how tired he was, how heavy the world had become for him. But even through all of that, his eyes still carried that same steady light I fell in love with, that quiet strength that used to make me feel safe. In his hand, he held a small, worn photograph. It was the one of me and Jana, sitting on the porch of our old apartment, the one he always kept folded in his pocket. His lips were moving, but he wasn't shouting. He wasn't praying loudly. He was whispering my name, softly, again and again, as if the sound of it alone could keep him alive, as if saying it might somehow reach across the distance between us. Jesus looked at me then, and his gaze was endless, deeper than the sky itself. "I hear everyone," he said. "Not a single one is lost." Then everything shifted like a breath pulled out of me, and I felt it, right where my ribs meet, that heavy, familiar press that had been living there for months. It settled in my chest like a stone. I knew, in the same way I know the shape of Jana's laugh, that what I was about to see wasn't small or gentle. It wasn't meant for me alone. It was meant to be shown, like a warning thrown across an ocean. His voice arrived without footsteps, steady, tired, full of a sorrow so old it sounded like the sea. "You have seen the war of men," he said. "Now I will show you the war behind the war." The light around us cooled and dimmed, like someone closing a curtain on a midday room. When it opened again, I was standing in a place I had only ever seen on the news, a room that felt like money and velvet and old promises. The walls were dark polished wood, the curtains heavy as secrets. A long table ran down the center, the kind used to sign things that change people's lives. Two men sat across from one another, calm and composed, Putin on one side, and across from him, the American president, Donald Trump. They spoke in measured sentences about ceasefires and peace, their faces practiced for cameras, their hands meeting for the photo. I had seen that handshake on television and in headlines, but now I saw the air around it, the small movements no camera could catch. Behind Putin, there was something else. Not a shadow from a lamp, not a trick of light. It was alive in a way that made the air taste metallic. It moved like a thought that had learned to walk. It had no horns, no grotesque shape. It was flatter, truer. It was corruption made flesh, patient and dressed in the manners of power. It leaned close, as if telling an old joke, and I could feel the words it offered like heat against my neck. They were not loud. They were the sort of promise that sneaks into your ear and remakes the maps inside your head. The dark thing fed him pictures. A burning map, stamped with new borders, armies like a woven thread, cities folded under one flag. In my chest, I felt each image as if it were a bruise forming. The vision was not a single flash. It came like a film reel, careful and slow, showing how a peace could be turned into a pause. It whispered that the ceasefire wasn't an end. It was a plan. Celebrate now, it seemed to say. Sleep now. Rebuild later. Come back harder. I saw how it stroked his confidence, how it dressed cruelty in righteousness, how a leader might begin to believe his own story, that violence is a kind of service, that power is a kind of salvation. Watching it, I thought of small things that prove people are still people. A sunflower button sewn into Jana's shirt, a dried fleck of paint I still had under my thumbnail from when we painted her room, the tiny chipped teacup my mother used for mornings. Those pieces of ordinary life felt fragile as glass beside that slow, greedy hunger. The deception moved with a patience that made my skin crawl. It was not loud, not desperate. It was comfortable, like a man in a room full of chairs he owns. I could almost see how easy it would be to let that whisper become your prayer, how pride could slip into your heart and rearrange everything until violence looked like destiny, until mercy sounded like weakness. I could feel the way belief would bend, how a quiet, steady pride could drown out the last small light of doubt, the last soft voice that might say no. Then my eyes turned to Trump. And what I saw behind him was not just one shadow stretching long and cold across the floor, but a restless storm of smaller spirits, swirling like smoke in the dark. They moved fast, twisting and circling him the way moths chase the edge of a flame, their shapes flickering in and out, their voices overlapping, soft, honeyed, convincing. Each one whispered something different, but all their words carried the same poison. You are the great deal maker. Only you can bring peace. They will build statues in your honor. You are the peacemaker the world has been waiting for. Their tone was sweet, seductive, soaked in flattery. It wasn't the kind that comes from love or truth. It was the kind that slides in through the cracks of pride and takes root there. I watched as his heart seemed to lift with every word, believing he was in control, believing that this was his moment, the great negotiation that would etch his name into history. I could almost feel the energy around him change, that electric sense of certainty that blinds even the sharpest men. But he didn't see what I was seeing. He thought he was shaking hands with another man, standing across the table from an equal. But he wasn't. He was striking a deal with something ancient, something patient and cold. A spirit of deception, older than any empire, older than any throne, the same whisper that has spoken to kings, tyrants, and conquerors since the dawn of chaos. He saw a political rival. I saw the corruption crouched low behind that rival, not in the man's face, but in the shadow beneath it, feeding on pride, feeding on power. And then, in the stillness that followed, through the hum of that dark whispering, I heard Jesus speak again. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through everything, through the noise, through the confusion, like thunder that rolls not through the air, but through the center of your chest. Men debate politics and borders and economies, he said, but they are fighting shadows. The enemy's greatest weapon is not the bomb, not the gun, not the army. It is the whisper of pride in the ear of a powerful man, the whisper that says, "You are a god." The scene widened before me, and my breath caught as if the air itself had changed. The light around me began to shift, not brighter, not dimmer, but alive. It moved like it was breathing. Suddenly, I was looking down, though I didn't know from where. It wasn't the world I remembered. It wasn't Earth the way I had seen it with human eyes. It was as if my vision had been opened to something far beyond the surface of things. Below me lay my homeland, Ukraine. But it wasn't the shattered, scarred land I had fled from. It wasn't the streets filled with ruin or the echoes of sirens and sorrow. No, I saw it as it truly was, through spiritual sight. The land itself seemed to glow with a faint golden pulse, like it was still alive, still breathing through the pain. Above it, the skies were alive, not with clouds or smoke, but with movement so vast and fierce that my soul trembled just to behold it. There was a war being fought there, not of men, not of armies, but in the heavens. I saw dark beings, countless and wild, swirling in a storm that seemed endless. They moved like living shadows, twisting and surging together, a black tide reaching down toward the earth. They wanted to consume it, to drown it in hopelessness, to spread corruption, to feed on despair. I could feel their hunger. It was cold, hollow, and endless, like the echo of something that had forgotten love. But they were not alone. Over the land stood warriors of light, angels, fierce and radiant beyond words. They shone like the dawn breaking through eternal night. Their armor was alive, shimmering like molten silver and flame, and their swords were made of light, so pure it sang when they moved. They stood shoulder to shoulder, unbroken, unyielding, forming a vast, blinding wall that stretched as far as I could see. When their blades moved, ripples of brilliance rolled across the sky, tearing through the blackness. And each time a shadow fell, another angel rose, filling the gap without hesitation, as though they were one being made of countless hearts. Then I saw what gave them their strength, what kept them standing, even as darkness raged against them. From every corner of the world, tiny sparks began to rise. At first I thought they were stars being born, but then I saw they were threads. Threads of gold, delicate yet powerful, rising upward like fireflies drawn to the heavens. They came from homes, from churches, from fields and city streets. They were prayers, the living breath of faith. Every single one was a whisper of hope, a cry sent upward through the chaos. I saw one golden thread rise from a small wooden church in Oklahoma, where a handful of old women were kneeling in prayer. Their hands trembled, their voices cracked, but the light that rose from them was steady and strong. Another thread came from a dorm room in Brazil, where a young woman knelt beside her bed, her Bible open, tears shining on her cheeks. Another rose from a mother in Poland, her hands red and raw from packing boxes of food and blankets for strangers she'd never meet. Her prayer carried upward through her exhaustion. And then I saw one rise from Maxim. He was kneeling in the mud, his uniform torn, rain running down his face. Around him, the air shook with the thunder of war, but his eyes were lifted upward. His lips moved in prayer, not loud, not desperate, but steady. His voice joined the others, and from his chest, a golden thread rose into the sky, straight and unwavering, joining the thousands, then millions above him. Those threads of prayer, all of them, wove together, crossing and binding, forming a vast, luminous web that spread across the heavens. They intertwined with the light of the angels, becoming part of their armor, feeding their strength. Each prayer, each act of faith, no matter how small, became a spark of power that pushed back the darkness. The angels' swords blazed brighter with every cry lifted upward, every whispered plea, every heartbeat that refused to give in to despair. Then Jesus turned to me, and when he spoke, his single word carried more weight than thunder. Everything around us shifted again. Suddenly, I was no longer standing in the light. I was hovering over a dark land, a night sky ripped open by fire. I saw a Russian missile streak upward, cutting through the clouds like a blade. It glowed red against the stars. Around it, shadows moved, shapes like living smoke, twisting and whispering, guiding it toward its mark. I felt their intent, the corruption, the hatred, and then I saw where it was headed. A hospital. I could see the faces of children sleeping inside, doctors moving quietly in dim hallways, mothers praying by small beds. My heart froze. And just as the darkness rushed forward, something else stirred. A light, soft at first, then swelling like a tide. From across the world, threads of gold began to rise. They shimmered, thousands of them, reaching upward and then sweeping across the sky. They came from a small church in California, where people were gathered that very moment. Not famous, not powerful, just ordinary people with open hands and tearful eyes. They were praying, singing, crying out to heaven. I could feel their hearts, raw, real, desperate. Those golden prayers struck the shield of light surrounding the children's hospital, and it flared like a sunrise. The missile's guidance flickered, twisted, and failed. It veered off course, missing its target completely. The explosion lit up an empty field far from any home, any soul. The people in that little church never knew. They thought they were just praying like they always did, never realizing their faith had saved hundreds of lives. This, Jesus said, his voice filled with power that vibrated through every part of me, is how the war is truly fought. His words rolled like thunder and light at once, not in the grand halls of men, but in the quiet places where hearts kneel before heaven. The enemy wants you to drown in the news, to stare at chaos and feel helpless. He wants you to believe peace will come from treaties, from leaders, from men, because he knows, if my people understood the true power of their prayers, his kingdom of shadows would crumble to dust. As he spoke, I saw it, the world beneath, so tangled in confusion and noise. The endless headlines, the debates, the politics, all of it like ripples on the surface of a deep, unseen ocean. Beneath it raged the real battle, not of guns or armies, but of spirit and faith. Light against darkness, truth against corruption, and love, steady and unbreakable, holding the line. Then, as gently as it began, the vision faded. The roaring of that unseen battle grew quiet, until all that remained was light, endless, warm, and peaceful. I stood there again beside him, surrounded by stillness so deep it felt alive. My chest ached with a mix of awe and sorrow. I looked at Jesus, the one who had shown me everything, and my heart broke open. I want to stay, I whispered, the words trembling. Please, I don't want to go back. It's too hard, I'm too tired. He looked at me with eyes that saw everything, every memory, every wound, every ounce of pain I carried. And he smiled, not the kind of smile that hides sorrow, but one that holds understanding deeper than words. He didn't scold me, didn't rush me. He just stood there, calm, steady, full of a love that wrapped around me like light. My child, he said softly, his voice gentle but firm, your daughter needs you. Maxim needs the hope your survival will bring. But more than that, you have a story to tell. He paused then, and his gaze seemed to reach through me, through time itself. They are trusting in men, he said. They are celebrating a false peace. You must return and tell them what you've seen. Tell them not to surrender to fear. Tell them to pray, not with scattered words, but with hearts that truly believe. Their prayers are the real weapons in this war. That is your calling now. The thought of leaving him, of leaving that perfect peace, was the most painful thing I have ever felt. It wasn't like any pain I had ever known on earth. It was deeper, sharper, like someone was tearing the very soul straight out of my chest. Every part of me wanted to stay. I wanted to fall to my knees and plead, to tell him that I couldn't go back to the noise, the corruption, the weight of the world. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't need to ask. I already knew. My time there wasn't meant to last. My mission, whatever it was, wasn't finished. There was still something I had to do. I will, I whispered, though my voice cracked and my heart broke as I said it. Tears streamed down my face. He reached out and placed his hand gently on my head, and in that moment I felt it. Not just a touch, but a force that seemed to pour straight into me. A surge, a flood, a river of warmth and light that carried strength, hope, and love so pure it felt alive. It wasn't only light, it was life itself, pouring through me like fire that didn't burn. I am with you always, he said, and his voice wasn't just sound. It was felt, in my bones, in my chest, in every hidden corner of who I was. It vibrated through me like music older than the world. Then, everything changed. The light around me began to fade, soft at first, then faster, spinning away like the last spark of a candle. I felt myself falling, fast, heavy, helpless, pulled back through the veil, down into the cold and the dark. The peace was gone, replaced by a violent electric shock that ripped through my body. My chest heaved, my lungs seized, my eyes flew open to blinding white light. The first sound I heard was chaos, alarms, shouting, the harsh rhythm of machines, beeping, sharp and urgent. My whole body felt like it had been crushed and then forced back together. Pain tore through me, but it was a strange kind of pain, fierce but proof that I was alive. "We've got her, we've got a pulse," someone yelled. I gasped, dragging in air like I had been underwater for hours. The oxygen burned, each breath clawing at my lungs. My chest ached so badly I thought it would break apart again. I tried to sit up, but hands, gentle but firm, pressed me back down. Ma'am, it's okay. You're in the hospital. You had a massive heart attack," a calm voice said beside me, steady and sure, trying to ground me back into this world. Everything around me blurred, shapes, lights, the sterile smell of disinfectant. I turned my head and saw Lisa, my host mom, standing in the corner. Her hands were over her mouth, tears running down her face. When our eyes met, she let out a sound, half sob, half laugh, and rushed to my side. "Jana," I croaked. My throat was dry, my voice thin as air. "Jana, she's safe?" Lisa nodded through her tears, still clutching my hand. "She's with Brandon's parents. She's okay. Oh, Natalia, we thought we lost you." I wanted to speak, to tell her everything, about the shift, the vision, about Jesus. But the words were trapped somewhere between the two worlds. My mind was still stretched between heaven and earth, between that infinite warmth and this fragile body. Everything here felt too bright, too sharp, too heavy. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. I couldn't tell. Time felt strange, fragile, like it didn't belong to me anymore. When the doctor came in, I could see the disbelief already on his face. His name tag said Dr. Matthews. He carried a thick file in one hand, his expression caught somewhere between awe and confusion. "Mrs. Kovalchuk," he said carefully, clearing his throat, "I need you to understand what's happened." He looked down at the file, then back at me. "Your heart stopped. You had no pulse, no measurable brain activity. For 23 minutes, by every medical definition, you were gone." He hesitated, flipping through the pages as if hoping for a mistake. "And yet, your brain scans are perfectly normal. There's no damage, no reason, no science, no logic that explains this." He looked at me again, his eyes searching mine. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't answer. I just stared back, my hands trembling as tears slipped down my face, not from fear, but from knowing. I didn't need him to explain what had happened. I already knew. I had seen beyond the veil, beyond the chaos, beyond the limits of this fragile body. And deep inside, I knew why I had come back. I had been sent. There was something I still had to do, something I had to tell, something the world needed to hear. So that is my message to you. I'm not a theologian. I'm not some political analyst in a clean office surrounded by maps and theories. I am a mother from Kyiv, a woman who has buried fear, carried loss, and for reasons I may never understand, was allowed to see behind the curtain for 23 minutes. You'll watch the news. You'll see faces on screens, shaking hands, hear the same old promises and speeches, words that sound like hope but dissolve as soon as the cameras turn away. The world will tell you again and again to trust in those things, in people, in power, in policies, to believe that the next vote, the next deal, the next headline will fix what's broken. But I'm telling you, as someone who has stood in the presence of Jesus, do not put your faith in the plans of proud men. Their vision is small. Their hearts are clouded. They listen to voices that twist truth into noise. They run after shadows, convinced they hold the light. The real power, the kind that shakes both heaven and hell, is already in your hands. It's in that quiet room where you close the door and whisper a prayer through your tears. It's in your church when the voices rise together, trembling but united, like a flame that refuses to die. It's in the child who folds their hands and says, "God, please help." It's in the old woman who still prays for peace, though she's buried everyone she ever loved. Those prayers, your prayers, are not small. They are not lost. They move through the darkness like arrows of light. They are weapons. They are fire. They are strength for the unseen armies that stand guard over this broken world. Jesus sent me back to tell you this. Don't stop. Don't give up when the days feel heavy or when the headlines make it look hopeless. Don't let the noise drown out the truth. Pray for the people of Ukraine, yes, but also pray for the leaders of the world. Pray that their eyes be opened, that their hearts be humbled, that the walls of corruption fall and the hidden pain be brought into the light. Heaven is not a dream. The battle between light and darkness is not some old story. It's happening now in ways most will never see. And your faith, your quiet, steady faith, is stronger than any army, stronger than any throne. Jesus is alive. He hears you. Every word, every tear, every heartbeat that turns into prayer. Please, don't ever forget that.